I thought the $76 million would be the end of the story. 8 years of my family telling my husband he was delusional. 8 years of them treating him like he didn't exist at Thanksgiving dinners. 8 years of my sister comparing him to her corporate attorney husband who pulled in $250,000 a year while Russell worked in a rented workshop for $3,500 a month. The day the acquisition was announced, my father called me for the first time in 2.5 years, not to apologize, to congratulate himself. That's when I started reading the contracts, really reading them. What I found wasn't vindication. It was something so much worse. The first time my father met Russell, he spent 45 minutes explaining why stability mattered more than ambition. We were at a restaurant in Whitcomb, the kind of place where the waitstaff knew my parents by name and the menu didn't list prices. Russell had ordered water. My father had noticed. "Engineering is fine," Dominic Ashbury said, cutting his steak with the precision of a man who'd spent 32 years in private wealth management. "But contract work? That's not a career, Ingrid. That's a placeholder." Russell didn't argue. He never did. He just nodded politely and mentioned he was working on something long-term, something he believed in. My father's expression didn't change, but I saw his hand tighten slightly on his fork. That was 2015. Russell was 29. I was 26. We'd been dating for 7 months. My mother, Marjorie, tried a gentler approach. "We just want you to be realistic, sweetheart. You've seen what a real career looks like. Your sister's husband, Victor, he made partner at 34. That's the kind of trajectory that builds a life." She meant the kind of trajectory that builds the life they wanted for me. The house in Prescott Estates, the country club membership, the ability to donate generously to the symphony and have your name in the program. Russell lived in a 500-square-foot apartment above a dry cleaner. His workshop was a 15-minute drive away in a commercial building that mostly housed HVAC suppliers and a screen printing business. The rent was $1,200 a month. He'd been leasing it for 3 years. "What exactly are you developing?" my father asked. "A tactile interface system," Russell said. "For accessibility applications primarily. But the underlying technology has broader applications." My father set down his fork. "How much have you invested?" "About $40,000 so far. Materials, prototyping equipment, patent attorney fees." "And you've raised how much capital?" "I haven't sought outside investment yet. I'm still in the development phase." My father looked at me, not at Russell, at me. "Ingrid, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" We went outside. It was November, cold enough that I could see my breath. My father didn't waste time. "He spent $40,000 on a hobby," he said. "That's not a business plan. That's a fantasy." "He has a patent pending." "Patent pending means nothing. Do you know how many patents never generate a single dollar? I deal with this every week. Smart people convincing themselves they're going to change the world while their bank accounts drain." I didn't say anything. "Victor makes $285,000 a year. He has equity partnership. Your sister will never have to worry about money. That's what I want for you." "I'm not Celia." "No," he said. "You're smarter than Celia, which is why this is so disappointing." We went back inside. Russell was still sitting exactly where we'd left him, hands folded on the table. He'd barely touched his food. I married him 4 months later. The wedding was small. My parents attended but didn't contribute financially. My mother cried, not from happiness. Celia was my maid of honor and spent the entire reception making comments about the venue. "It's charming," she said, looking around the community center we'd rented for $800. "Very intimate." Victor gave Russell a firm handshake and said, "Congratulations, man. Make sure you take care of her." As if Russell needed permission, as if I needed protection. Russell's grandfather, Calvin, was the only person who seemed genuinely happy. He was 83, a retired aerospace engineer who'd worked on guidance systems in the 1970s. He shook Russell's hand for a long time and told him, "Your work is real. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." 3 weeks after the wedding, Calvin invested $20,000 in Russell's project. He didn't ask for equity. He didn't ask for a timeline. He just wrote the check and said, "Finish it." My father found out 6 months later. I made the mistake of mentioning it during a phone call. "He took $20,000 from an 83-year-old man," my father said. Calvin offered. Russell didn't ask. That's even worse. He didn't have the integrity to refuse. Started calling my parents less after that. The first 2 years of our marriage, we lived in a 1-bedroom rental in Northfield, 40 minutes from my parents' house. Rent was $1,450. Russell's contract work brought in between $3,200 and $4,100 a month, depending on project timelines. I was working as a research coordinator at a medical nonprofit, making $48,000 a year. We were fine, not comfortable, but fine. Russell spent every evening and weekend in the workshop. I'd visit sometimes, sit on a folding chair while he explained whatever iteration he was testing. I didn't always understand the technical details, but I understood the focus, the belief that he was building something that mattered. My family treated it like a cute phase, something he'd eventually outgrow. At Thanksgiving 2017, Victor asked Russell how the little project was going. "Making progress," Russell said. "I'm on the 7th prototype now." "7th?" Victor laughed. "Jesus, most people would have given up by now." "Most people don't finish anything meaningful," Russell said quietly. Victor's smile tightened. "Right. Well, when you're ready to talk to someone about actual business strategy, let me know. I have some contacts in product development." Russell thanked him. I wanted to throw my wine glass. Later in the kitchen, my mother pulled me aside. "He's been at this for how long now?" she asked. 5 years total, 3 since we got married. "Ingrid," she put her hand on my arm. "I know you love him, but love doesn't pay bills. You're 29 if you want children." "We're not having this conversation. You need stability, real stability, not hope and credit card debt." I left the kitchen, found Russell outside on the back deck, alone, looking at his phone. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah." He put the phone away. "Just checking some measurements. I think I know what's wrong with the current design." We went home early. My mother called the next morning to apologize for pushing. She didn't actually apologize for the content, just the timing. By 2019, we had about $11,000 in credit card debt. Most of it was from workshop expenses, materials, equipment, one emergency repair on Russell's car. We made minimum payments. We didn't go on vacation. We didn't eat out except for my birthday and our anniversary. My father knew. I don't know how, but he knew. "If you need help," he said during one of our now quarterly phone calls, "we can set up a meeting with our financial advisor, get you on a realistic budget." "We're fine." 11,000 in consumer debt is not fine, Ingrid. That's a crisis." I hung up, stared at the phone for 5 minutes, called him back. "How do you know our debt amount?" Silence. "Dad, how do you know?" "Your mother and I are listed as emergency contacts on some of your accounts. We receive notifications. Remove yourselves." "We're trying to help. Remove yourselves." He did, but the damage was done. They knew exactly how precarious things were, and they were watching. The extended family gatherings were the worst. My father's side had always been the dominant presence. His 2 brothers, their wives, their children. Success was measured visibly. Career titles, home values, vacation destinations. Russell didn't fit the template. At my uncle's retirement party in 2019, I watched it happen in real time. Russell introduced himself to people, shook hands, made conversation, and within minutes, they'd drift away. Not rudely, just away. Toward Victor, who was discussing a high-profile case. Toward my cousin Shane, who'd just made junior partner at a consulting firm. Russell stood alone by the appetizer table for 20 minutes before I found him. "Sorry," I said. "I got caught talking to Aunt Elise." "It's fine." He wasn't looking at me. "I'm going to step outside for a bit." When I mentioned it to my mother later, she waved it off. "People are just more comfortable talking to. People with similar backgrounds," she said. "It's not personal. He's my husband." "I know, sweetheart, and we're all very welcoming, but you can't expect people to have deep conversations with someone they don't know well. Give it time." Time didn't help. If anything, it got worse. By the 5th or 6th gathering, people stopped trying. They'd nod politely when Russell entered a room and immediately continue their conversations as if he hadn't arrived. Not hostile. Just absent, Celia noticed. Of course she did. "Russell seems quiet lately," she said to me at a baby shower for a cousin. "He's always quiet." "No, I mean disconnected, like he's not really here." "Maybe because no one talks to him." She frowned. "That's not true. Victor talks to him all the time. Victor asks him how the project is going and then changes the subject." "Well, what else is there to talk about? It's been, 6 years now, and it's still not finished?" I walked away before I said something I'd regret. The real break started in early 2020, right before everything shut down for the pandemic. My parents' 45th wedding anniversary was planned as a large event at a country club in Prescott. 200 guests, seated dinner, live music. The kind of celebration that announced status as much as love. Russell and I arrived together. I was wearing a dress my mother had specifically requested I buy. Navy blue, conservative, $340 I couldn't really afford. Russell was in the only suit he owned, the same one from our wedding. The seating chart had us at table 14. My parents were at table 1 with their closest friends and my father's business partners. Celia and Victor were at table 3 with other young professionals. Table 14 was mostly distant relatives and family friends I barely knew. "They put us in Siberia," I muttered to Russell as we found our seats. "It's fine," he said. "I don't need to be at the head table." But it wasn't fine. Because when my father gave his speech, a long, sentimental reflection on 45 years of marriage, success, family, he thanked everyone who'd supported them, named people specifically. His partners at the firm, his brothers, Celia and Victor, who represent the next generation of excellence. He didn't mention me, didn't mention Russell. Afterward, I found my mother by the bar. "Dad forgot to mention me in his speech," I said. She touched my arm. "Oh, sweetheart, he was just overwhelmed. You know how he gets with public speaking." "He had a written list. I saw it." "Well, I'm sure it was an oversight. Don't take it personally." "How else should I take it?" She sighed. "Ingrid, you chose to distance yourself from us. You can't expect to be at the center of everything when you've made it clear you don't value what we value." I stared at her. "I married someone you don't approve of. That's not distancing, that's living my life. And we've been nothing but supportive. You've been tolerant. That's not the same thing." I found Russell outside in the parking lot, sitting in our car with the door open, checking his phone. "You ready to go?" I asked. "Yeah." He looked up at me. "You okay?" "Not really." We drove home in silence. The next morning, my mother texted, "I hope you're not still upset about last night. Dad feels terrible." I didn't respond. 3 days later, my father called. your mother said you were hurt by my speech, he said. That wasn't intentional. Okay. I had a lot to cover. I can't mention everyone. You mentioned Celia and Victor by name. Because they're... He stopped himself. They're what, Dad? They're established. They have achievements worth highlighting. What did you want me to say? My daughter and her husband, who's been working on the same project for 7 years with nothing to show for it. I felt something crack inside me. Something small but fundamental. I want you to say I'm your daughter, and you're proud of me. That's all I ever wanted. I am proud of you. I just wish you'd make better choices. I hung up. Didn't call back for 6 weeks. The pandemic made everything worse and better simultaneously. Worse because Russell's contract work dried up almost entirely. No one was hiring for non-essential engineering consultations. Better because it meant we didn't have to attend family gatherings. We lived on my income and savings for 4 months. Russell filed for unemployment. My father sent a text. If you need financial help, let me know. We can set up a loan with reasonable terms. I showed Russell. He stared at it for a long time. He's offering to loan us money, Russell said slowly. Not give. Loan. He's always been careful about money. Your sister bought a $1.2 million house last year. Did he loan her the down payment? I didn't answer because we both knew he hadn't. By August 2020, Russell was back to part-time contract work. And something had shifted in his approach to the project. He was working longer hours, more intensely. He'd scrapped the 7th prototype entirely and started over. I know what was wrong, he told me one night at 2 a.m., standing in our kitchen with diagrams spread across the table. The whole interface architecture was too rigid. It needs to be adaptive, responsive to individual user patterns. That sounds complicated. It is, but it's right. I can feel it. By December, he had a working 8th prototype. He filed for an expanded patent. The attorney fees were $6,800. We put it on a credit card. Our debt climbed to $17,000. Christmas 2020 was virtual. We did a Zoom call with my family. It was excruciating. Victor dominated the conversation, talking about a major case win. Celia showed off their new kitchen renovation. My parents beamed through the whole thing. When Russell mentioned he'd filed for an expanded patent, there was a brief silence. That's great, my father said. How much did that cost? About $7,000. Another silence. Well, my mother said brightly, let's hope it leads somewhere this time. This time, as if all the previous years had been failures, as if progress wasn't real unless it generated immediate profit. After the call, I sat in the dark living room for an hour. Russell found me there. You okay? He asked. They're never going to respect you, I said. No matter what you accomplish, they've already decided you're a failure. I don't need their respect. I do. I looked at him. I need them to see what I see. I need them to admit they were wrong. Why? The question caught me off guard. Because they're my family. So I want them to be proud of me. I want them to see that I made the right choice. Russell sat down next to me. You didn't make a choice to prove them wrong. You made a choice because you believed in something. Don't let them take that from you. I wanted to believe him, but the need for vindication was already growing inside me like a tumor. In January 2021, my father called with a proposal. I've been thinking about your situation, he said, and I want to help. Okay. I have a colleague whose son works in product development at a medical device company. Good company, stable, benefits, they're hiring engineers. Starting salaries around $95,000. I closed my eyes. Dad? Just hear me out. Russell could keep working on his project in his spare time, but you'd have financial stability, real stability. You could pay off your debt, start saving. Russell doesn't want to work for someone else right now. He's close to something. Ingrid. His voice was gentle, dangerously gentle. He's been close to something for 8 years. At what point do you admit this isn't working? It's working fine. You have $17,000 in debt. You're one emergency away from bankruptcy. That's not fine. That's denial. We'll figure it out. When? When? You're 40 and still living paycheck to paycheck? When you've wasted your entire 30s on a fantasy? I should have hung up. Instead, I said, "Did you offer Celia career advice when she wanted to be a yoga instructor?" That was different. She was 23, and she gave it up after 2 years when she realized it wasn't viable. She gave it up because Victor didn't want a wife who worked evenings and weekends. That's not fair. You've never questioned a single choice Celia's made. Not one. But everything I do is a mistake. Because your choices are mistakes. His voice rose. You married someone with no future, no plan, and no sense of responsibility. And now you're defending him while drowning in debt. I'm trying to save you from your own stubbornness. I hung up, blocked his number for 3 months. During those 3 months, something strange happened. My mother started calling more frequently, not to lecture, just to check in. How are you doing, sweetheart? Fine. I know your father can be intense, but he means well. Does he? He's just worried about you. We both are. These calls always felt off. Too careful. Too scripted. Like she was gathering information for a specific purpose. In March, she mentioned that she'd run into Elise Calder, a family friend who worked in estate planning. She asked about you, my mother said. Said she hadn't seen you in forever. I've been busy. She mentioned she does consultations for young couples, financial planning, asset protection, that kind of thing. I thought it might be helpful. We don't have assets to protect. Well, if you ever want to talk to someone objective about your options, she's very discreet. I didn't think much of it at the time. 2 weeks later, Elise called me directly. Your mother suggested I reach out, she said. I know things have been stressful for you financially, and I wanted to offer a complimentary consultation just to review your situation and see if there are any strategies that might help. I don't think we need. It's completely free and confidential. Sometimes it helps just to have a professional perspective. I agreed because I was tired and overwhelmed, and it seemed harmless. The consultation was an hour long. Elise was warm, professional, and asked very specific questions about our finances, how much debt we had, what Russell's income looked like, whether we had any savings, whether we'd discussed what would happen if Russell's project never generated revenue. I'm not trying to be discouraging, she said. But from a planning perspective, it's important to have contingencies, especially if there's a significant income disparity in the marriage. There isn't, I said. Well, you're carrying the household on your income, correct? While Russell invests in the project. Invest sounds wrong. He's building something. Of course, I'm just thinking about protection. If things were to become difficult, financially or otherwise, it's good to have structures in place. After the call, I felt vaguely uneasy, but couldn't articulate why. A week later, my mother asked how the consultation went. Fine, I said. She was nice. Did she have any useful suggestions? Some. We're not in a position to implement anything right now. Well, keep her information. You never know when you might need good legal advice. In June 2021, my father reached out through Celia. He wants to apologize, she said. He knows he's been hard on you. He's been hard on Russell, not me. Same thing though, right? You guys are a unit. I didn't respond. Look, Celia said. I know Dad can be a lot, but he's getting older. He's had some health stuff recently. Nothing serious, just reminders that he's not invincible. And I think he's realizing he doesn't want to be estranged from you. He's not estranged from me. I just don't call him every week. That's kind of the same thing in his mind. I agreed to meet him for coffee. Neutral territory. No Russell, which felt like a concession on my part, but also a relief. My father looked older, grayer, tired in a way I hadn't noticed before. I'm sorry, he said before I even sat down. I've been unfair to you, and to Russell. I waited. Your mother helped me see that I've been projecting. My own fears about stability, my own experiences, and that's not fair to put on you. Okay? I want to support you, both of you, whatever that looks like. What does that mean practically? It means I'll stop criticizing Russell's work. I'll stop offering unsolicited advice. I'll trust that you know what you're doing. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like progress. And, he continued, if you ever need help, financial or otherwise, I want you to know the door's open. No judgment, no strings. That's a big shift. I know, I've been thinking about it for months. Your mother finally convinced me that I was going. To lose you entirely if I didn't change. We talked for 2 hours. He asked about Russell's project with what seemed like genuine interest, asked about my work, shared things about his own career I'd never heard before. Failures, setbacks, moments of doubt. When I left, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope that we could repair this. I called Russell from the car. How'd it go? He asked. Good, really good actually. He apologized. For what specifically? For being unfair, for projecting his fears onto us, for not supporting us. Silence. Russ? That's great, he said. His voice was flat. I'm glad. You don't sound glad. I'm just cautious. People don't change overnight. He seemed sincere. Maybe he was, just don't expect too much too fast, okay? I agreed, but I wanted to expect things. I wanted to believe my father had finally seen us clearly. Over the next 6 months, my father kept his word. He stopped making comments about Russell's work. He asked questions that seemed genuinely curious rather than skeptical. He invited us to family dinners and made efforts to include Russell in conversations. Russell remained polite, but distant. I told myself he needed time to trust it. At Thanksgiving 2021, my father pulled me aside. I've been thinking, he said. Russell's been working on this project for a long time. Has he thought about next steps? Like, if the technology is as promising as he believes, has he considered how to bring it to market? He's filed patents. He's been documenting everything. Right, but that's the technical side. I'm talking about business development, partnerships, investment. He hasn't really thought that far ahead. That's what I figured, and I want to help with that, if he's open to it. Help how? I know people. Not in engineering, obviously, but in investment, in business strategy. And I have a colleague, Miles Stratton, who sits on the board of a tech company that does accessibility products. I mentioned Russell's work to him very briefly, and he was intrigued. You talked to someone about Russell's project? Just general terms, no details. But Miles said if Russell ever wants to have a conversation about potential partnerships or funding, he'd be happy to connect. It felt like support. It felt like my father finally believing in us. That would be amazing, I said. Thank you. Of course. You're my daughter. I want you to succeed. When I told Russell, his reaction was measured. That's generous of him, he said. You don't seem excited. I am. I'm just focused on getting the current prototype finalized. I'm not ready for business conversations yet. But you will be soon, right? Probably. I want to make sure it's ready. I only get one shot at a first impression with people at that level. That made sense. I didn't push. In January 2022, my father called with another opportunity. Miles Stratton's company is hosting a tech showcase in March, he said. Emerging technologies in accessibility and adaptive interfaces. It's invitation only, very selective. I mentioned Russell's work again, and Miles said he'd be happy to extend an invitation if Russell wants to present. Are you serious? Completely. It's a major opportunity. Investors, industry leaders, potential partners. If Russell's work is as groundbreaking as he believes, this could be the moment. I was vibrating with excitement when I told Russell. His response was immediate. No. What? Why? I'm not ready. The current prototype still has calibration issues. I need at least another 6 months. Russell, this is exactly the opportunity you've been working toward. I've been working toward perfecting the technology, not performing it half-finished in front of investors. It's not half-finished. You said yourself it's functional. Functional isn't refined. I know what I'm talking about, Ingrid. We argued for an hour. I finally convinced him to at least meet with my father and Miles to discuss it. The meeting was at my father's office. Miles Stratton was in his early 50s, polished, confident. He spent 30 minutes asking Russell technical questions that I barely understood. Russell answered precisely, carefully. This is impressive, Miles said finally. Really impressive. The applications go way beyond accessibility. That's the foundation, Russell said. But yes, the underlying technology has broader uses. Have you thought about licensing versus direct sale? I haven't made any decisions yet. Smart. Keep your options open. Miles leaned back. Here's my thought. The showcase in March would be good exposure, but more importantly, it would force you to have a presentation-ready version. Deadlines sharpen development. I've seen it 100 times. Russell considered this. The timeline is aggressive, but not impossible. Not impossible. Then I'd strongly encourage you to do it. Your father-in-law speaks very highly of your work. I'd like to see it in action. The meeting ended with Russell agreeing to consider it. In the car, I asked what he was thinking. I don't like being rushed, he said. You're not being rushed. You're being given an opportunity. Those aren't mutually exclusive. But over the next week, he came around, started working even longer hours, brought the 9th prototype to a presentation-ready state, practiced his pitch. I was proud of him, proud of us. My father called regularly to check in, offer support, ask if Russell needed anything. It felt like we were finally on the same team. The showcase was scheduled for March 18th. On March 3rd, Russell got an email from the patent attorney, Garrett Merrick, that changed everything. There's a problem, Russell said, staring at his laptop. What kind of problem? Someone filed a provisional patent for a similar interface technology. Filed in January. It's not identical to mine, but there's overlap in some of the core mechanisms. Can they do that? You've had your patent pending for over a year. Theirs is provisional, faster, cheaper, and it creates a conflict. Garrett says we need to file a continuation patent to protect the specific innovations in my 9th prototype, but it's going to cost about $12,000 and take at least 6 weeks to process. We don't have $12,000. I know. We sat in silence. Could we borrow it? I asked. From who? I already knew the answer. My parents. Russell looked at me. No, Russell. Absolutely not. We're not starting this relationship dependent on them. It's not dependency. It's a short-term loan. We'll pay them back as soon as... As soon as what? When does this project start making money, Ingrid? When do we stop being the family charity case? He'd never said it that bluntly before. I called my father the next morning. He listened quietly as I explained the situation. $12,000 for the continuation patent, he said. And you need it quickly. Yes, I know it's a lot. It's fine. I can have a check ready by Monday, but I want to be clear. This is a loan. We'll draw up terms, interest rate, repayment schedule. I'm not doing this to be nice. I'm doing this because I believe Russell's work has potential and protecting intellectual property is a legitimate investment. Of course. Whatever terms you think are fair. I'll have Elise draw something up. She handles this kind of thing regularly. Elise, the family friend who'd done our financial consultation a year earlier. The documents arrived Wednesday. 5 pages of dense legal language. I read through them twice, didn't fully understand half of it, but the core terms were clear. $12,000 loan, 6% annual interest, repayment beginning in January 2023, full balance due within 3 years. Russell signed without reading it carefully. I hate this, he said. But the patent is more important than my pride. We deposited the check Friday. Garrett filed the continuation patent the following Tuesday. The showcase was in 9 days. On March 17th, the night before the showcase, Russell was in the workshop until 3 a.m., making final adjustments. I fell asleep on the folding chair watching him work. He woke me at 4:30. I think it's ready, he said. The showcase started at 10 a.m. We arrived at 9:15. The venue was a hotel conference center in Prescott, the kind of place that hosted corporate events and fundraising galas. There were maybe 75 people there, investors, company representatives, journalists. My parents arrived at 9:45. My father shook Russell's hand and said, "You've got this." My mother hugged me and whispered, "I'm so proud of you." Russell's presentation was at 11:30. He was scheduled for 20 minutes, 15 for demonstration, 5 for questions. He was nervous but controlled. Set up the prototype on the presentation table. Explained the technology in clear, accessible terms. Demonstrated the interface responding to tactile input patterns. Showed the accessibility applications, and then hinted at broader uses. The room was silent when he finished. Then someone in the back started clapping. Others joined. Within seconds, it was genuine applause. Miles Stratton approached Russell immediately afterward. "That was exceptional. I want to schedule a follow-up conversation next week. Are you available Tuesday?" "Yes," Russell said. "Absolutely." 3 other companies requested meetings. A journalist from a tech publication asked for an interview. My father stood off to the side, beaming. When I caught his eye, he gave me a thumbs up. I felt vindicated in a way I'd never felt before. Not just for Russell, for me, for choosing him, for believing when no one else did. It felt like the beginning of everything we'd worked for. The meeting started in April. Russell met with Miles twice, both times at Miles's office. The conversations were positive but vague. Lots of interest, but no concrete offers. "They're being careful," Russell said. "It's a new technology. They need to do due diligence." "How long does due diligence usually take?" "Could be months, could be a year." We kept waiting. Russell continued contract work to keep income flowing. I picked up extra projects at my job. We made the minimum payment on my father's loan in May. In June, Miles called Russell directly. "We're interested in moving forward," he said. "But we'd like to bring in a technical consultant to evaluate the patent portfolio and assess production feasibility. Would you be comfortable with that?" "Of course." "Great. I'll have someone reach out to schedule time in your workshop." The consultant was a woman named Nadine Hawthorne, mid-40s, precise and thorough. She spent 6 hours examining the prototypes, reviewing Russell's documentation, asking questions about manufacturing processes and scalability. "This is solid work," she said at the end. "Really solid. But there's complexity here that's going to require significant capital for production. You're looking at minimum $2 million just for tooling and initial manufacturing setup. Russell nodded. He'd expected this. Have you thought about acquisition versus licensing? Nadine asked. I'm open to either. Depends on the terms. Smart. I'll include that in my assessment. She left. Russell seemed cautiously optimistic. 2 weeks later, Miles called with an update. Nadine's assessment was very positive. We're moving into serious discussions internally about whether acquisition makes sense for us. I'm not making any promises, but I wanted you to know this is real. Thank you, Russell said. I appreciate the transparency. One thing, though, we'd need to do full financial due diligence on you and Ingrid. Standard practice for acquisitions at this level. Just making sure there are no liabilities or complications that could affect the deal structure. Like what? Debt, tax issues, any legal complications. Nothing invasive. We just need authorization to run a background check and review financial records. Russell looked at me. I nodded. That's fine, Russell said. The authorization forms arrived 3 days later. We signed them and sent them back. I didn't think about it again until my father called in July. Miles mentioned they're doing financial due diligence, he said. That's a good sign. Means they're serious. Yeah, Russell's hopeful. Just one thing, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but the loan we gave you shows up as debt. That's not necessarily a problem, but it might raise questions. What kind of questions? About your financial stability, about your ability to manage money. Investors get nervous about people who carry significant personal debt, especially consumer debt. It's not consumer debt, it's a loan for the patent. I know that, you know that, but on paper it's just debt. There's no documentation that connects it specifically to the intellectual property. My stomach tightened. So what are you saying? I'm saying it might be cleaner if we restructured the loan, made it explicitly an IP development loan with a formal agreement that it's tied to the patent assets. That way it looks professional instead of personal. Would that cost anything? Elise would need to draft new documents, maybe $1,500 in legal fees, but it's worth it if it makes the deal smoother. I discussed it with Russell that night. I don't like changing terms midstream, he said. We're not changing terms, just clarifying them. Why does it need clarification now? We've had this loan for 4 months. Because the acquisition team is looking at our finances. Dad's just trying to help us look more professional. Russell stared at the ceiling. This feels like we're being managed, like we're not in control of our own situation. We're not being managed. We're being strategic. He didn't argue further. We signed the new documents. In August, Miles called with the news we'd been waiting for. We're ready to make an offer, he said. We want to acquire the full patent portfolio plus technology transfer. We're offering $3.2 million. Russell went pale. 3.2 million? Correct. Paid out over 3 years with milestones tied to production development. We'd also want you on contract for 2 years as lead technical consultant at $180,000 annually. I grabbed Russell's arm so hard I probably left marks. Yes, Russell said. Yes, we'd like to move forward with that. Great. I'll have our legal team draft the acquisition agreement. Should have something to you within 2 weeks. When Russell hung up, we just stared at each other. $3.2 million, I said. Plus the consulting contract. Russell, we're going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay. He pulled me into a hug. I felt him shaking. I need to call my grandfather, he said. Calvin cried on the phone. I knew it, he said. I always knew. I called my parents. My father answered. I could barely get the words out. They made an offer, $3.2 million, plus a consulting contract. Silence. Then, Ingrid, sweetheart, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you both. My mother got on the phone, crying. Celia called 10 minutes later, screaming with excitement. That night, Russell and I sat in our small apartment looking at projections. After taxes, after the loan repayment, after paying off our credit card debt, we'd have enough to buy a house, to build savings, to live without constant financial stress. Your father was right to push me toward the showcase, Russell said quietly. I wouldn't have been ready otherwise. I nodded. He believed in you. He believed in something. I didn't know what that meant at the time. The acquisition documents arrived in late August. 93 pages of legal language. We need a lawyer to review this, Russell said. Do we? Miles has been straightforward with everything. Ingrid, this is $3 million. We're not signing anything without legal review. We hired Oscar Bancroft, an attorney who specialized in IP transactions. He charged $400 an hour. We didn't care. Oscar spent a week reviewing the documents. When we met with him, his expression was carefully neutral. This is a solid offer, he said. The valuation is fair. The payment structure is reasonable. But, Russell said, there are some provisions that concern me, specifically around the IP transfer and the consulting arrangement. He walked us through it. The acquisition included not just the current patents, but any future developments Russell created in the same technology space for 5 years. The consulting contract had a non-compete clause that prevented Russell from working on similar technologies for any other company during that period. That's pretty standard, Oscar said. But it's also limiting. You're essentially locked into this company for 5 years, and any innovation you create during that time belongs to them. Is that negotiable? I asked. Everything's negotiable. The question is whether they'll walk if you push back. Russell considered this. What else? Oscar flipped to page 47. There's a clause here about debt obligations. It says the acquisition amount can be adjusted if there are undisclosed liabilities that affect the valuation of the IP. We don't have undisclosed liabilities, I said. You have the loan from your father. That's disclosed in your financial records. But there's language here that suggests if that debt is determined to have claims against the IP assets, it could reduce the acquisition payment. Why would it have claims against the IP? Russell asked. According to the restructured loan documents you signed in July, the debt is explicitly tied to IP development costs, which means, technically, it could be argued that the IP was developed with borrowed capital and therefore the lender has an interest in the assets. I felt cold. But that's just my father. He's not going to make a claim. Probably not. But the company acquiring the IP wants to make sure there's no legal ambiguity. They're protecting themselves. So what do we do? Russell asked. You need to get a written release from your father stating he has no claim to the intellectual property and that the loan is purely personal debt. That should satisfy the acquisition team. I called my father that night. Of course, he said immediately. I'll have Elise draft something. It's not a problem. The release document arrived 2 days later. I read it 3 times. It stated that Dominic Ashbury held no claim to the intellectual property developed by Russell Fairmont. It stated that the loan issued in March 2022 was personal debt with no connection to IP assets. It stated that full repayment of the loan would be required by January 2025, regardless of the status of any business transactions. I signed it. Russell signed it. We sent it to Oscar, who forwarded it to Miles's legal team. This should clear everything up, Oscar said. We're in good shape. The final acquisition agreement was scheduled to be signed on October 15th, 2022. 3 days before the signing, Miles called Russell. "Quick heads up," he said. "We're making a small adjustment to the payment structure. Instead of $3.2 million over 3 years, we're doing $2.8 million with $400,000 held in escrow pending final patent clearance." "What does that mean?" Russell asked. "Your continuation patent is still in process, right? We want to make sure there are no conflicts with the provisional patent that was filed in January. Once that's cleared, probably 6 to 8 months, the escrow releases." Russell looked at me. "Why wasn't this mentioned before?" "It just came up during final risk assessment. It's standard practice. You'll still get the full amount, just slightly delayed on a portion." Russell put the phone on speaker. "And if there is a conflict, then we'd renegotiate based on the revised IP portfolio. But honestly, I don't expect that to be an issue. Your attorney confirmed the patents are distinct." After the call, Russell sat very still. "Something's wrong," he said. "Miles said it's standard." "Nothing about this has been standard, Ingrid. Think about it. The rushed timeline for the showcase, the financial due diligence, the loan restructuring, the escrow. We're being positioned into something." "Positioned into what? A $2.8 million acquisition?" "I don't know, but I don't like how many moving pieces there are, how many documents we've signed, how much information we've given them access to." "You're being paranoid." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally paying attention." We signed the agreement on October 15th, deposited $1.4 million, 3 days. Later, the first half of the non-escrowed payment minus taxes. We paid off our credit card debt, paid off my father's loan in full, put a down payment on a house in Northfield. My father hosted a family dinner to celebrate. Everyone was there: my parents, Celia and Victor, aunts and uncles, cousins. It felt like a coronation. "I always knew Russell had something special," my father said during the toast. "I'm just glad I could help bring it to fruition." Russell smiled politely. Didn't correct him. Later, in the car going home, I said, "You okay?" "Yeah." "You seem distant." "I'm just thinking about the escrow, about why they structured it that way." "Russell, we just made over $1 million. Can we enjoy this for 5 minutes?" He nodded, but he didn't stop thinking about it. November 2022 was supposed to be peaceful. We moved into the new house. Russell started his consulting contract with Miles's company. I reduced my hours at the nonprofit to part-time. But Russell was different. Quieter, more withdrawn. He started going through old emails, old documents, the patent filings, the loan agreements, the acquisition contract. "What are you looking for?" I asked. "I don't know. Inconsistencies, maybe." "Inconsistencies in what?" "In the timeline, in how things happened." He made a spreadsheet. I watched him populate it over the course of a week. January 2022. Provisional patent filed for similar technology, unknown party. January 2022. Father begins repair attempts, March 2022. Patent attorney says we need continuation patent. March 2022. Father offers loan specifically for patent costs. March 2022. Showcase presentation organized by Father's contact. July 2022. Loan restructured to tie explicitly to IP development. August 2022. Acquisition offer received October 2022. Acquisition completed with escrow on continuation patent. "You see it?" Russell asked. "See what?" "The pattern. Every major expense, every major decision was preceded by a problem that required a specific solution, and your father always had the solution ready. That's called being helpful, or it's called creating dependency." I stared at the spreadsheet. You think my father engineered this? I think your father is a wealth manager who specializes in creating favorable conditions for his clients, and I think we became one of his projects. That's insane. Is it? He spent 8 years telling us I was wasting my time. Then suddenly, right when I'm close to completion, he becomes my biggest supporter. Right when a mysterious provisional patent creates a conflict that requires expensive legal work that we can't afford, and he's right there with a loan? You're seeing conspiracy where there's just coincidence. Maybe. Russell saved the spreadsheet. Or maybe I'm seeing clearly for the first time. Over the next month, Russell became methodical. He started requesting documents. From Garrett, the patent attorney, copies of all correspondence about the provisional patent conflict. From Oscar, copies of all communications with Miles's legal team. From Elise, copies of the original loan documents and the restructured versions. He organized everything chronologically, cross-referenced dates, looked for connections. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself he was just processing stress. But in early December, he came to me with a document I'd never seen before. This is the original patent conflict notice from January, he said. From Garrett, I skimmed it. Technical language about the provisional filing, potential overlap, recommendations for continuation patent. Okay? Look at who filed the provisional patent. I found the line. The applicant was listed as Prescott Holdings, LLC. So? Prescott Holdings is a shell company. I looked it up. It was created in November 2021, single member, LLC. Want to guess who the member is? I already knew. My father. Your father filed a provisional patent for technology similar to mine, then waited 2 months, then told his attorney to notify me about the conflict, which created the need for legal work, which created the need for the loan, which created the debt documentation, which created leverage. I sat down. Why would he do that? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Russell spent Christmas week reconstructing the full timeline. I helped because at this point I needed to know. What we found was this. In November 2021, 1 month before my father's apology, he had incorporated Prescott Holdings, LLC. In January 2022, Prescott Holdings filed a provisional patent for a tactile interface system. The filing was intentionally broad, designed to overlap with Russell's existing patents. In March 2022, Garrett received notice of the conflict and recommended the continuation patent. The cost, $12,000. My father provided the loan. The loan documents, both versions, had been drafted by Elise, who was not just a family friend, but my father's personal estate attorney. In July 2022, when Miles' company started financial due diligence, the loan was restructured to explicitly tie it to IP development costs. This created a legal connection between the debt and the intellectual property. In August 2022, Miles' company made the acquisition offer. The acquisition agreement included language about debt obligations affecting IP valuation. In October 2022, we signed a release stating my father had no claim to the IP. But the release still acknowledged that the IP had been developed, in part, with debt financing from Dominic Ashbury. The escrow clause ensured that $400,000 of the acquisition payment wouldn't be released until the patent conflict was resolved. Russell pulled up the provisional patent filing from Prescott Holdings. It had never been pursued beyond the initial filing. It was abandoned in August 2022, the same month as the acquisition offer. He created the conflict, Russell said. Created the need for the loan, made himself a stakeholder in the IP development, then abandoned the provisional patent once we'd signed all the documents. But he didn't make a claim. He signed the release. He didn't need to make a claim. He just needed documentation that he was involved, that the IP was developed with his financial support. That creates a narrative. A narrative for what? Russell opened another document. For this. It was a contract amendment we'd signed in September. Small addendum to the consulting agreement. Russell had signed it without reading it carefully. It was only 2 pages, seemed administrative. Section 4.3 stated, in the event that any party with documented financial interest in the development of the licensed technology makes a claim against the acquisition proceeds, the company reserves the right to redirect payment to resolve said claim prior to distribution to seller. They could redirect payment to anyone with a documented financial interest, Russell said, like someone who provided development financing. But Dad signed a release. The release says he's not making a claim. It doesn't say he's not a documented interested party. He is. We acknowledged it in writing. I felt sick. So what does this mean? It means if your father wanted to, he could claim a portion of the acquisition payment. Not as a debt repayment, we already paid him back. As a return on his investment in IP development, and the company would have legal grounds to honor that claim. He wouldn't do that. Maybe not, but he has the leverage to do it, which means he has power over us. We sat with this for days. Russell wanted to confront my father immediately. I convinced him to wait, to gather more information. What information? He asked. We know what he did. We know the mechanics. We don't know why. Why does it matter? Because there's a difference between malice and strategy, between trying to take advantage of us and trying to position himself for something else. Russell looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. How is there a difference? I didn't have an answer. In early January 2023, I called Elise, told her I needed to discuss some questions about the loan documents. We met at her office. She was professional, warm, exactly as she'd always been. What can I help you with? She asked. I'm trying to understand the loan restructuring from last July, why it was necessary to tie it explicitly to IP development. Your father was concerned that without clear documentation, the loan might be mischaracterized during financial due diligence. It was about protecting you and Russell. Protecting us from what? From questions about debt management, from looking financially unstable to potential investors. But the restructuring created documentation that my father was a financial stakeholder in Russell's IP. Elise's expression didn't change. Only in the sense that he provided development capital. That's factually true. Did you advise my father to file the provisional patent? I'm sorry? In January 2022, Prescott Holdings filed a provisional patent that created a conflict with Russell's continuation patent. Did you advise that filing? Elise set down her pen. I can't discuss your father's business strategies with you. That would be a conflict of interest. But you drafted our loan documents. You advised both sides of that transaction. I advised your father. I provided the documents to you as a courtesy at your father's request. If you'd wanted independent counsel, you should have retained your own attorney. We didn't know we needed one. That's not my responsibility, Ingrid. I left her office understanding 2 things clearly. My father had planned this, and Elise had helped him. That night, Russell and I laid out everything we knew. My father had 1. Created a patent conflict to generate legal expenses we couldn't afford. 2. Provided financing with terms that made him a documented stakeholder. 3. Restructured the loan to explicitly connect it to IP development. 4. Ensured acquisition documents included language about financial interests. 5. positioned himself to claim a portion of acquisition proceeds if he chose. Why would he do all this? I asked. What does he gain? Russell had been thinking about this for weeks. Control, leverage, the ability to shape outcomes. Maybe he never intended to actually take money from us. Maybe he just wanted to make sure he could. That's insane. Is it? He's a wealth manager. His job is literally to position assets and relationships for maximum advantage. We're not his family in this context. We're a portfolio. I wanted to argue. But I kept thinking about the last 8 years. The constant criticism, the sudden support, the perfectly timed solutions to manufactured problems. What do we do? I asked. We have options. We could confront him. We could hire an attorney to review everything and look for ways to invalidate his stakeholder status. We could do nothing and hope he never exercises the leverage he's built. What do you want to do? Russell was quiet for a long time. I want to know the truth. I want to understand what he thought he was doing. And if the truth is that he was manipulating us the entire time, then I want him to admit it. I called my father the next day, told him Russell and I wanted to meet, that we had some questions about the acquisition documents. Of course, he said. Is everything okay? We'll talk when we see you. We met at his office on January 12th. He was alone, which surprised me. I had expected my mother or Elise. What's on your mind? He asked. Russell laid out the timeline, showed him the spreadsheet, the provisional patent filing, the loan restructuring, the acquisition language. My father listened without interrupting. When Russell finished, my father leaned back in his chair. You think I manipulated you, he said. Did you? Russell asked. I think that's the wrong question. The right question is, did I help you? Help us by creating problems we had to solve? Help you by creating pathways to success you wouldn't have found on your own? Yes. He looked at me. Ingrid, when you married Russell, I saw 2 outcomes. Either he'd fail and you'd spend your life struggling, or he'd succeed and you'd be taken advantage of because neither of you understood how business actually works. So you decided to teach us? I decided to protect you. The provisional patent established that I had interest in the technology development. It created documentation. It made sure that if Russell's work succeeded, there was a record of who made it possible. I made it possible, Russell said. I spent 8 years developing this. With whose money? Your grandfather's $20,000? That barely covered prototype 3. The rest came from Ingrid's income, which she could provide because she wasn't worried about her safety net, because she knew her family would catch her if things fell apart. Russell stood up. We paid you back. We paid back every cent. I know, and I never asked for more. But I could have. That's the point. I built a structure where I had options, where you couldn't be exploited by people like Miles Stratton. Miles has been completely transparent, I said. My father laughed. Actually laughed. Miles is on my company's board of directors. He's been my client for 6 years. You think he approached Russell independently? The room tilted. I introduced Miles to Russell's work, my father continued. I arranged the showcase invitation. I made sure Miles's company was positioned to make the acquisition because I wanted Russell's technology in the hands of people I could influence, people who would treat my daughter fairly. You've been controlling this the entire time, Russell said. I've been protecting Ingrid. There's a difference. No, Russell said. There's not. We left my father's office with more questions than answers. He'd admitted to engineering the circumstances, but framed it as protection, as love. I don't know what to do with this, I said in the car. Russell was driving, hands tight on the wheel. He turned us into a project, a wealth management strategy. He said he was protecting me. From what? From my success. From the possibility that I might actually know what I'm doing. We drove in silence for 10 minutes. I need to see the acquisition contract again, Russell said. Well, all of it. Every addendum. We spent that night going through everything with Oscar, our attorney. Russell explained what we learned about my father's involvement. Oscar was quiet for a long time. This is complex, he finally said. Your father hasn't done anything illegal. Unethical, maybe. Manipulative, definitely. But not illegal. He provided legitimate financing. He filed a legitimate provisional patent that he later abandoned. He arranged business introductions. All of that is technically above board. But he has leverage over the acquisition payment, Russell said. Potentially. If he chose to assert a claim as a stakeholder, the company could honor it. But he'd have to prove material contribution to IP development beyond the loan you already repaid. That's not impossible, but it's not automatic either. What about Miles? I asked. If he's on my father's board, if Dad arranged the whole acquisition, that's a problem, Oscar said. It suggests potential conflict of interest. If your father had financial incentive to direct the acquisition to Miles's company, and if he benefited from that in any way, it could invalidate portions of the agreement. Russell leaned forward. How would he have benefited? Oscar pulled up something on his computer. I did some research after you called. Miles Stratton's company paid consulting fees to a firm called Northfield Advisory in 2022. 12 payments, $25,000 each. Total, $300,000. What's Northfield Advisory? A business consultancy that specializes in tech sector investment strategy, owned by Dominic Ashbury. The room went silent. My father was paid $300,000 by the company that acquired Russell's technology, I said slowly. For consulting services. Correct. Payments started in April 2022, 1 month after the showcase. Ended in October 2022, the month the acquisition finalized. Russell put his head in his hands. He sold us. He facilitated a transaction, Oscar corrected. And took a fee for it. Again, not illegal. But it does create a massive conflict of interest that was never disclosed to you. We could have done nothing. Taken the money we'd already received. Moved on with our lives. But Russell couldn't let it go. Neither could I. I want to file a complaint, Russell said. With the State Bar, against a lease, with whatever. Business Ethics Board regulates wealth managers against your father. I want everyone to know what he did. That would blow up the acquisition, Oscar warned. Miles' company would pull out. You'd lose the remaining payments, the escrowed funds, probably the consulting contract. I don't care. Russell, I said, think about this. I am thinking. I'm thinking about 8 years of being treated like I was worthless. 8 years of your family acting like I was stealing from you by existing. And now I find out it was all strategy, all positioning. I'm supposed to just accept that? My father was trying to protect me. Your father was trying to control you, us, the outcome, everything, and he succeeded. I didn't argue because he was right. We spent a week discussing options. Oscar advised against immediate confrontation, suggested we gather more information first. Understand the full scope of my father's involvement with Miles's company. Russell hired a private investigator. Cost $5,000 for 2 weeks of work. The investigator found Dominic Ashbury had been on Miles Stratton's board since 2019. Northfield Advisory had received over $800,000 from Miles's company between 2020 and 2022. The $300,000 in 2022 was specifically itemized as technology acquisition consulting services. My father held stock options in Miles's company worth approximately $2.3 million. He made more from the acquisition than we did, Russell said, staring at the report. Not quite true. We'd received $1.4 million and had $1.4 million pending. But Russell's point was clear. My father had profited significantly from directing Russell's technology to Miles's company. Did Miles know we're your daughter and son-in-law? Russell asked me. I thought about every interaction, every meeting. He never mentioned it, but he must have known. Of course he knew. Your father told him. Probably framed it as helping family while creating a lucrative acquisition. Opportunity. Oscar confirmed that none of this had been disclosed in the acquisition documents. There was no mention of Dominic Ashbury's relationship to either party. No mention of consulting fees or board positions. This is material non-disclosure, Oscar said. It could be grounds to void the contract. But that would cost us everything, I said. Probably, but it would also cost your father his reputation, his business relationships, potentially his wealth management license if the ethics board found serious violations. Russell looked at me. What do you want to do? I realized I'd been asking myself the wrong question. The question wasn't what I wanted. The question was what I could tolerate, and the answer was, I couldn't tolerate having been treated like an asset in my father's portfolio for 8 years. We filed a complaint with the state bar in late January 2023 against Elise for conflict of interest in representing both parties in the loan transaction without disclosure. The complaint included all the documentation, the loan agreements, the restructuring, the provisional patent, the timeline. Elise called me 3 days later. What are you doing? She asked. Not angry, confused. I'm making sure people know what happened. Ingrid, I acted as your father's attorney. I never claimed to represent you. You drafted documents that we signed, documents that created legal jeopardy for us. You didn't advise us to get independent counsel. You didn't disclose that you were creating leverage for my father. Because that wasn't my job. My job was to represent your father's interests, while pretending to be a family friend helping us out. Silence. I never pretended to be anything, Elise said quietly. You assumed. That's different. She was right. But I didn't care anymore. The Bar Association opened an investigation in February. Elise was required to provide all documentation related to the loan transactions. My father called the same day. You're destroying Elise's career over nothing, he said. It's not nothing. She didn't do anything wrong. She represented me. That's her job. She represented you while creating the illusion that she was helping us. That's deceptive. You're being vindictive. I'm being honest, for the first time in years. He hung up. In March, we filed a formal complaint with Miles's company. Not a lawsuit yet, just a detailed letter outlining Dominic Ashbury's undisclosed financial relationships, his consulting fees, his stock options, and his role in directing the acquisition. Miles's legal team responded within 48 hours, called an emergency meeting. Why didn't you disclose this earlier? The general counsel asked Russell. Because we didn't know earlier. We found out in January. Your father-in-law is on our board of directors. He's been paid extensively for consulting services. And you claim you didn't know he was involved in directing this acquisition to us. He told us he introduced Russell's work to you. He didn't tell us he was being paid to do it. The general counsel looked at Miles. Miles looked uncomfortable. This is a problem, the general counsel said. A significant problem. If Dominic had undisclosed financial interest in this transaction. I didn't have financial interest, my father's voice interrupted. He joined the meeting by phone. I had a consulting relationship with your company that predated Russell's acquisition by 2 years. I advised on multiple technology evaluations. Russell's was one of many. But you profited specifically from this acquisition, Russell said. I profited from my ongoing consulting work. The fact that one evaluation involved my son-in-law is coincidental. Coincidental, Russell repeated. You created a patent conflict to force me into debt. You restructured that debt to make yourself a stakeholder. You arranged the showcase that led to the acquisition. You consulted on the acquisition and got paid $300,000. And it's all coincidental. I helped you. All I did was help you. The meeting ended with no resolution. Miles's company put the remaining acquisition payments on hold pending internal review. The $1.4 million we were owed, the $400,000 in escrow, all frozen. Russell's consulting contract was suspended. They're going to void the whole thing, Russell said. Maybe that's what we want, I said. He looked at me. You want to give up $1.8 million? I want my father to face consequences. Even if it costs us everything? Yes. By April, the situation had escalated beyond our control. Miles's company launched an internal investigation into Dominic Ashbury's role in the acquisition. The board demanded his resignation. He refused. The State Bar expanded their investigation of Elise to include questions about whether Dominic had engaged in unauthorized practice of law by structuring the loan transactions. My mother called, crying, "You're destroying your father. You're destroying our family." He destroyed it first, I said. He just did it slowly, carefully. He was protecting you. Stop saying that, I screamed. He was controlling me. He was controlling Russell. He turned our marriage into a business strategy. That's not protection. That's manipulation. She hung up, didn't call back. Celia sent a text. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but you're hurting everyone, including yourself. Is it worth it? I didn't respond. In May 2023, Miles's company offered a settlement. They would pay us $2.1 million immediately, $1.4 million owed, plus $700,000 as a settlement for non-disclosure of conflicts of interest. In exchange, we would sign a release preventing any further claims. The settlement included a termination of Russell's consulting contract with 6 months of severance. It also included a requirement that Dominic Ashbury resign from the board immediately and repay $300,000 in consulting fees tied to the acquisition. They're making him pay, Oscar said. That's significant. Is it enough? Russell asked me. I thought about it for a long time. No, but it's something. We signed the settlement on May 18th. The money hit our account on May 22nd. My father lost his board position, lost $300,000, faced ongoing Bar Association scrutiny that would likely result in public censure even if he didn't lose his license. Elise received a formal reprimand for failure to advise potential clients to seek independent counsel. It went on her professional record. Miles Stratton faced no consequences beyond embarrassment. We moved out of the house in Northfield in June, bought a smaller place in a different county, somewhere my family didn't know the area, didn't have connections. Russell stopped answering calls from my family, changed his number, made it clear he was done. I answered when my mother called in July. Your father wants to talk to you, she said. No. Ingrid, please, he's suffering. You got your settlement, you made your point. Can't we move past this? There's nothing to move past, Mom. He lied. He manipulated. He treated us like assets, and when we found out, he insisted it was love. He did it because he was terrified of losing you. Then he should have trusted me instead of controlling me. You're throwing away your family over money. I'm not throwing away anything. I'm choosing to live without people who think affection and manipulation are the same thing. She cried. I listened. Then I hung up. Calvin died in September. Russell's grandfather. The only one who'd believed from the beginning. The funeral was small. Russell spoke. Talked about how Calvin had invested $20,000 when no one else would. How he'd said the work was real. He was right, Russell said. Not because the technology succeeded, because he believed in me when belief mattered more than money. My family didn't attend. They sent flowers. It's February 2024 now, a little over a year since we learned the truth. Russell started a new project, something smaller, just for himself this time. No investors, no partnerships, no family involvement. I started teaching part-time at a community college. Research ethics, conflict of interest, how relationships shape outcomes. We have $2.1 million in the bank, a house we actually own, no debt. We also have no contact with my family. My father sends emails occasionally. I don't read them. Celia tried to visit in December, showed up at our house unannounced. Russell answered the door and told her we weren't interested. She texted me later. You can't stay angry forever. I texted back. I'm not angry. I'm done. There's a difference. People ask sometimes if I regret how things turned out. If I wish we'd just taken the money and stayed quiet. The answer is no. Not because I feel vindicated. Not because my father suffered consequences. Because I finally understand something fundamental. Worth isn't about money. It's not about family approval. It's not about proving people wrong. It's about refusing to let people who claim to love you treat you like a strategy. My father spent 8 years positioning us, building leverage, creating outcomes. And I spent 1 year dismantling everything he built. He lost $300,000, lost his board position, lost his reputation in certain circles. But more importantly, he lost me. Not through rejection, through clarity. I didn't cut him off because I hate him. I cut him off because I finally saw him accurately. And what I saw wasn't a father protecting his daughter. It was a wealth manager protecting his portfolio. The escrow money released last month, $400,000. The patent conflict was resolved, not in Russell's favor, actually. The continuation patent was denied due to overlap with the provisional filing, the one my father had created and abandoned. But because the provisional was abandoned, there was no competing claim, just a notation in the patent record that Russell's technology had been developed in parallel with another project that was never pursued. Miles's company paid the escrow anyway, said it was cleaner to close everything out than to fight over technicalities. Russell laughed when he saw the deposit. Your father created a conflict that cost us a stronger patent, and we still got paid. He didn't count on us fighting back, I said. No, Russell agreed. He counted on us being grateful. My mother sent me a birthday card in January. Didn't write anything inside, just signed her name. I threw it away. Russell asked if I was okay. Yeah, I said. I don't need her to understand. I just need her to stay away. Do you think they'll ever admit they were wrong? No. Does that bother you? I thought about it. Not anymore. It's March 2024 now. 2 years since the showcase. 2 years since I thought vindication would fix everything. Russell's working on a new interface system. This one's for educational applications. He hasn't told anyone except me and his lawyer. No family, no friends, no investors. When will you be ready to show it? I asked last week. when it's done, not when someone tells me it's time. We live in a house my family will never visit, work on projects they'll never know about, make decisions they have no influence over. And sometimes I get emails from my father, from my mother, from Celia. They all say versions of the same thing. We miss you. We love you. We're still here when you're ready. They don't say, we were wrong. We're sorry. We see what we did. Because they don't. They never will. To them, they were protecting me, guiding me, creating favorable outcomes. To me, they were controlling me, managing me, treating me like an asset to be positioned for maximum advantage. Those two realities can't coexist, so I chose mine. Last week, a journalist contacted Russell, someone writing an article about accessibility technology, wanted to interview him about his work. Did you mention the acquisition? I asked. No, I mentioned the technology, how it works, what it's for. The acquisition isn't the story. What's the story? He thought about it. That it's possible to build something meaningful even when everyone tells you it's worthless. The article came out yesterday, 3 pages in a tech journal, focused entirely on the technical innovation. Didn't mention my father, didn't mention the family drama, didn't mention the settlement, just Russell's work, what he built, what it does. My father probably saw it, probably told people he always knew Russell had potential. And maybe that's the real consequence. Not that he lost money, not that he lost his board position, but that he'll spend the rest of his life watching me succeed without him. Watching me build a life he has no access to. Watching me become impossible to ignore and impossible to control. People think the ending of a story like this should be peace, closure, healing. But that's not how this works. I'm not at peace. I'm just finished. I'm not healed. I'm just clear. And I'm not sorry. Not for the complaints, not for the settlement, not for cutting off my family. I'm sorry I wasted 8 years trying to earn their respect. I'm sorry I believed manipulation could be love if the intention was pure. I'm sorry I thought family meant you owed them tolerance even when they treated you like inventory. But I'm not sorry for recognizing what was happening, and I'm not sorry for stopping it. Russell's working late tonight. The new prototype is giving him trouble. He'll figure it out. He always does. I'm sitting at our kitchen table with documents spread in front of me. Old loan agreements, acquisition contracts, emails from my father. A timeline I've been building for over a year. Not because I'm going to do anything with it. Just because I need to remember, need to see it all laid out clearly. Need to know that what I experienced was real, was intentional, was designed. My father turned us into a project, and I turned him into a consequence. That's not revenge. That's not justice. That's just response. Tomorrow I'll put these documents back in storage, go to work, come home, make dinner with Russell, talk about his new project, talk about my students, live the small, quiet life we've built that no one else has access to. And somewhere, my father will wake up and check his portfolio, calculate his losses, wonder if I'll ever call. The answer is no. Not because I'm punishing him, because I finally understand that some people survive by becoming dangerous to dismiss. And I survived by becoming impossible to control.